2 days ago was a very proud moment for us when we received this message from the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi ji, highlighting the extraordinary work of Rajiv Malhotra and the Infinity Foundation. Although Narendra Modi ji is a man of very few words, he did take the time out to write a very detailed message regarding the achievements and the contribution of Rajiv Malhotra, contributions to the Indian diaspora and to the Indian community. And today, it is my honor and privilege to read this message to this entire gathering. So here it goes. Prime Minister of India, message. It is heartening to learn that Infinity Foundation, New Jersey, has completed a remarkable journey of 3 decades in preserving and enriching Bharat's rich intellectual and cultural heritage. Heartiest greetings and congratulations to the foundation, which has been one of the pioneers in this space. Due to Bharat's phenomenal growth across multiple sectors, there is a great interest in knowing about the country, its history and heritage. At such a time, it is important that Bharatiyas, both in the motherland and outside, are well equipped to communicate our knowledge with an informed and insightful perspective. In this space, Sri Rajiv Malhotra's important contributions to intellectual discourse over the decades have played a significant role in developing an educated understanding of Bharatiya heritage and culture globally. The Infinity Foundation has given an institutional impetus to Sri Malhotra's efforts by educating and nurturing new generations of thinkers who work at the intersection of intellectual rigor and civilizational confidence, especially among the Bharatiya diaspora. Institutions like the Infinity Foundation also strengthen the connection between global Bharatiyas and their roots by encouraging younger generations to explore culture, spirituality, literature, and classical arts. In a world that is increasingly searching for deeper meaning, the richness of Bharatiya thought, the celebratory spirit of our culture, our wholesome view of life, and the depth of our spiritual systems can be a source of strength and solace. I am confident that institutions like the Infinity Foundation will help in the world's engagement with Bharatiya culture with even greater vigor in the coming decades. Once again, I extend my greetings and best wishes to the Infinity Foundation and Sri Rajiv Malhotra on the completion of 30 years of the institution. I am sure that the celebrations on this occasion will inspire and energize the members of the foundation for the times ahead. Signed, Narendra Modi, dated 16th April 2025. Let's give a very big round of applause to Rajiv Malhotra and Infinity Foundation. So proud of you, Rajiv. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seemaji. While most of you are here because you have supported Rajiv Malhotra's journey, to appreciate the full extent of its impact, a documentary produced specifically for this occasion by Sangeeta Iyer, an award-winning filmmaker from Canada, will now be shown.
One looks up to a person who does not compromise on his values, on his ideas, on his own philosophy,
to take these leftists, these communists, head on a stage is a totally different quality.
Mr. Ajit Doval Kirti Chakra, who is presently the National Security Advisor of India for the third term running. He was extremely keen that we have this book released at the Vivekananda International Foundation.
He does not flinch in the face of battle, even when the stakes are high and even when the pressure of political correctness is intense.
Sanatan Dharma is really the way of the future of all of humanity, especially in the age of AI, as jobs go away. Rajiv was one of the very first to focus on it.
What the Infinity Foundation is doing is it's funding high-quality social sciences and humanities research that is simply not being taken up by the existing power structures in American and Western academia.
He's a warrior for knowledge. He's not a simple intellectual Shakti or a scholar Shakti. He's a Gnana Yodha.
And one thing that I really admire about Rajiv Ji is that he will call people out. There's none of this political correctness. He names and shames.
Infinity Foundation is the intellectual mothership of Sanatan Hindu Dharma.
He's one of the few public intellectuals who brings both a scalpel and a sledgehammer to the problem.
His influence has been in the area of determining the thoughts of people who generally are in the thought leadership space.
He's been able to raise a generation of leaders that have come under his umbrella.
Rajiv is one of his kind. And I wish there were more.
I think the other work beyond Rajiv's books that I think is important to mention is the type of funding that Infinity Foundation did in its early days of scholars.
In the modern times, I feel that has given them the much needed series of books, one after another, very well researched, very well presented.
Rajiv's work started way before the present awakening that's happened in India. So he was clearly one of the precursors of all of this happening.
We've been in the presence of a modern day Rishi. He saw deeper than any of us had seen.
Namaste. Today, we are not just celebrating an anniversary. We are witnessing history in the making.
To tell this story, I've spoken with nearly 100 voices from around the world, each sharing their unique perspective on Sri Ravi Malhotra's journey. From spiritual leaders to policymakers, scholars to youth, his impact is far-reaching. And while we can showcase all of them in this brief time, what you're about to experience is just a sneak peek.
30 वर्षों से राजीव मल्होत्रा जी के द्वारा स्थापित इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन अपने सनातन धर्म के प्रति श्रद्धा एवं सनातन धर्म का गौरव स्थापित करने के लिए विश्व भर में काम कर रहा है। लेखों के द्वारा और छायाचित्र के द्वारा और अन्य प्रचार माध्यमों के द्वारा अपने भारत और अपने भारत का संस्कृति के प्रति जो भी कुछ लोगों के द्वारा जो भी विरुद्ध कदम उठा रहे हैं उसके बारे में अपने भारतीय समाज को जागृति करने में और अच्छी तरह से अपने सनातन धर्म का तथ्य और तत्वों के बारे में लोगों तक पहुंचाने के लिए चरित्र में, कला में, संस्कृति में और न्याय में ये इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन के द्वारा अनेक कार्यक्रम हो रहा है। संस्कृत भाषा एवं भारतीय सनातन संस्कृति का सुरक्षित करने के लिए भारत में और अन्य विदेशों में जो राजीव मल्होत्रा जी के द्वारा जो प्रयास हो रहा है उससे भारतीय समुदाय लाभान्वित होता है। इनका जन्म दिवस 75 का अमृतोत्सव का संदर्भ में भगवान से प्रार्थना करेंगे। ऐसे ही राजीव मल्होत्रा जी और उनका जो टीम है वो भारतीय ऋषि परंपरा को, भारतीय सनातन संस्कृति को अपने प्रयासों के द्वारा विश्व में सभी स्थानों पर पहुंचाने का जो सेवा तत्पर है उनका भगवान की कृपा से अच्छे सौभाग्य, आरोग्य इत्यादि मिलने के लिए भगवान चंद्रमौलीश्वर से प्रार्थना करेंगे। हर हर शंकर, जय जय शंकर।
Let me congratulate Rajiv Malhotra ji
on completion of 30 years of his Infinity Foundation. He is so passionate about Sanatan Dharma, he is so passionate about the Bharatiyata, and he has been working day and night fighting against all injustice and misrepresentation of the ancient culture of India. He is a great scholar. He has an in-depth understanding of history, of geography, and of philosophy. And he has been author of many books, and his research works are greatly admired, and it is international standards.
बहुत अरसे से करीब 2 दशक से मैं उनका नाम सुन रहा हूँ। पूरे विश्व में उनकी बहुत कीर्ति प्रतिष्ठा है और भारतीय धर्म दर्शन अध्यात्म और संस्कृति को वैश्विक पटल के ऊपर पूरी प्रामाणिकता के साथ और वैज्ञानिकता के साथ प्रतिष्ठापित करने के लिए जिन्होंने बहुत प्रशस्त काम किया है। पूरे पहले तो भारत को देखा, यहाँ पढ़े, फिर दुनिया देखी और फिर जो विचार निकले वो इन्होंने उस पुस्तक के रूप में दिए और अब एक जुनून बन गया। आप देखिए कि करीब 18 देशों में 20 कंपनियां और उन सारी कंपनियों को एक कर्मचारियों से $1 माने वो नाम मात्र $1 लेके सारी कंपनियां उनके नाम कर दी और जो पूरा जीवन इसमें डेडिकेट कर दिया। मतलब ये कोई छोटी बात नहीं है। माने जिंदगी का मकसद ही कि मेरे जीवन का मकसद हमारा भारत, हमारी भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा, हमारे ऋषियों का चिंतन और वो कैसे इस विश्व में प्रतिष्ठापित हो, इतना बड़ा संकल्प लेकर के लगे हुए हैं।
Breaking India. That book, first time, what it did for me was a kind of a paradigm shift, which finally resulted into a film called Buddha in a Traffic Jam and my book Urban Axles. Intellectually, I found myself closer to Rajiv ji in the ecosystem. I think his major contribution is that in India, especially in the education and intellectual ecosystem, it was fully dominated by the leftists. So Rajiv ji, as a thought leader, pioneered this, and he created this awareness that there is other side to truth also. He showed the courage. So for me, the first sign of a leader is courage. And that's how I think a new kind of grand Indian narrative, the seeds were sown. And so that way he pioneered, and really respect him for that. Second thing, I really admire and appreciate that he invested in research and products of academic value to take these leftists, these communists, head on a stage is a totally different quality.
You see, in 2011, Rajiv ji had come out with his magnum opus, Breaking India. I was then deputy director at the Vivekananda International Foundation. It was then led by, the director was Mr. Ajit Doval, Kirti Chakra, who is presently the National Security Advisor of India for the 3rd term running. He was extremely keen that we have this book released at the Vivekananda International Foundation, that we disseminate this very, very useful, very timely warning to the entire Indian populace, to Indian intellectuals, to Indian institutions, because the threat he felt was extremely real. Stellar academic institutions like Harvard, governmental institutes, intelligence organizations, missionary organizations, NGOs were launching an all-out attack against the Indic civilization. And the attack at places was so subtle that we did not even know that we were under such virulent attack. It was Rajiv who first alerted people in India, people across the world, that this kind of an across-the-board savage attack was now in place. And we were not even aware of it. Rajiv has an impeccable background in information technology in the media industries, and he had been warning us of what could be done by information warfare, by information technology, by the social media to bring down an entire edifice of a democracy in India. People like Rajiv Malhotra are rendering yeoman service in the 2014 wave. A number of people have worked behind the scenes to generate that wave. And one of the most prominent of them all, I would say, is Rajiv Malhotra and his Infinity Foundation. Very quietly, in a very methodical way, in a very scholarly way, which could not be challenged in any academic institution, which could hold its own in the face of academic debate. As a civilization, there is a lot that we have to worry about. And not only is Rajiv Malhotra telling us to worry, he's telling us what to do about it, how to counter it.
Most either Indic or Hindu scholars fall into one of two camps. Either they're very Indian and speaking primarily to Indians, they are fully Americanized and speaking only on American terms, and their work is written in secular American terms. Taking an approach that's suffused with Hindu faith, but nonetheless written by somebody who's fully comfortable in the secular American intellectual milieu, really makes Dr. Malhotra's work distinctive. Where he really sits intellectually is bringing that Hindu perspective into empirical Western social science writing on the role of religion in society and on the role of India in America.
Rajiv's work started way before the present awakening that's happened in India. So he was clearly one of the precursors of all of this happening. 100 years ago, Sri Aurobindo was writing about how the West gets India wrong. He showed what the Western distortions about India are, but did not show what are the mechanisms through which it's perpetuated, how it is set up, how it works, etc. Rajiv has done that. So he's given you a much more detailed picture of what's happening. Seeing the newspapers, he said that is a retail level at which all this thing is being consumed by us and by other people. He says retailers can't just make up content of their own. And I said, who are the wholesalers? He said, the schools and colleges that teach the journalists, the Western journalists, to think this way. And now I think Indian journalists are also thinking that way. And then he said, so what's missing? I said, not sure. He said, well, R&D and manufacturing is missing. And he said, that is the universities. But the universities send students and field workers out into India to gather data, to observe things, etc. They are doing R&D. And then they are, out of that R&D, they are manufacturing whatever they want, whatever their narrative is. And those are put into textbooks. And then the reporter who has already read some of these things about India is framing India from a particular point of view. So he had the whole thing figured out.
From a public intellectual and from a person who is giving grants to scholars, he became a scholar himself. Now, this is a very, very unique and a rare phenomena. His thought is now finding its mention in the media, in the social media, then in the legal frameworks, and also later. His scholarship has 3 R's. It is research, rigor, and respect. This particular mainstreaming has had a cascading effect. This, along with his books and the conferences and the online courses, has bred hundreds of thousands of intellectuals and have given them a sense of purpose.
I think is important to mention is the type of funding that Infinity Foundation did in its early days of scholars. I know that many of the scholars that we work to even today are some of the early recipients of Infinity Foundation grants.
So he has had to face enormous ostracism and a kind of willful ignorance. And I wish more people had supported him in the initial years, but they didn't. And he kept going because he has got courage.
He does not flinch in the face of battle, even when the stakes are high and even when the pressure of political correctness is intense. Rajiv brilliantly dismantles the whole thing. This is where Rajiv is stellar. The glory of creation is in its diversity, and the binding aspect of creation is in these values that unify us. So you cannot sacrifice one for the other, and Rajiv understands this.
The book Snakes in the Ganga was meticulous in the way that it was researched, and it was robust, and its analysis was just excellent. And so I was completely honored to have written the foreword to that truly remarkable book. And I was always incredibly struck by not only his sincerity and his wisdom, but the ability to sincerely engage different ideas and give really nimble, sharp, cogent responses to those. So then I read Who's Educating Our Children? And again, it was just the most pertinent, take no prisoners, honest and sincere look at the problem of who actually is educating our children. And it's certainly not who you think it is. Honest. I find him to be remarkably open to challenge and criticism, and he just deals with that with aplomb.
Rajiv has been so deeply influential among people who are otherwise contributing their own thoughts and ideas. So in a sense, his influence has been in the area of determining the thoughts of people who generally are in the thought leadership space, writers, journalists, or intellectuals. I think that is where he has had maximum impact. The kind of impact he has had is difficult to calculate because there is the spread effect. So when we talk about Rajiv Malhotra's ideas to other people, then it gets cascaded to hundreds and thousands of people again. The word intellectual Kshatriya, which he invented, is probably very vital because that helps you decide the contours of what kind of ideological stance makes sense from an Indic and a Dharmic perspective.
Being different is probably the one where I first encountered Rajivji's work, but more importantly, where I encountered a framework which allowed me to understand what the cacophony that was inside of us, what its roots were, where it came from. And obviously breaking India is a natural consequence of discovering who you are. And then when I read through the book, suddenly the gaps that we were aware of were filled in one by one and a complete picture appeared the way it was. Who was responsible for the discord within us and also within the nation? The battle that Rajivji had been fighting. And it was clear that it was a battle that was being fought. Colonialist academia is a Goliath, and it's quite a frightening one. And so for a lone person to be challenging this Goliath was an inspirational, an example to all of us. I often say that our tradition is a Rishi tradition. And, you know, we have our shlokas, asatoma satgamaya, you know, allow me to see into the depths of what Satya is. And his works stand as a testament that here is a person who has been able to see in the depths of Satya in many instances. So we organized an event that was in the British Parliament. The parliamentary event was a phenomenon, and it takes courage for people to go into the British Parliament and start the conversation about reparations. So we had a wonderful event, full house and plenty of parliamentarians who came, and it was a masterclass. When I look at Rajivji's collection of books that he's produced, there is such a stockpile of raw material which is available to help equip those people who are now engaged in bringing about the change.
And so in some sense, it kind of becomes the entry point, anyone who's read any of Rajiv's books, to wanting to become activists, which of course is great for the Hindu-American Foundation.
He's an institution builder. There's a lineage of thought, a very unique lineage of thought that he has brought about. Today, I'm very happy to dedicate this effort to Rajiv, and our first publication of Narka Shastra, translation, a gigantic and mammoth task undertaken by late Pappu Venugopal Rao. We are very happy that you have just published, and I would like to showcase these books. This is the book, the volumes that we have published, and this is a very, very direct outcome of Rajiv's advocacy. So thank you, Rajiv, for inspiring us to set up a Indica Classical Library. He has built the foundation for an Indic Renaissance. He spawned so many thoughts, leaders, outfits, activists. Maybe he should settle down in one place like a guru.
I do travel in various continents, in all different types of countries, wherever I go. And the educated professionals, they have all read and have been impacted by Rajivji's writings. And I think that has given a framework for all such people all over the world in the Hindu diaspora.
And I think he was the very first person to do it. That really changed the opinion amongst many circles, including academic circles. Academics can hold stupid views, as we see also in the woke debates that are going on in the American and Western universities.
Universities are very self-protective epistemic communities, as we call them, police their boundaries, and Dr. Malhotra has been very influential in helping open up the intellectual world. Funders who simply give their money and walk away are very welcome at universities and traditional institutions, but they often fail to have an impact because all they do is fund the existing intellectual establishment in any particular field. What the Infinity Foundation is doing is funding the creation of a new intellectual establishment. It's funding challenges to the intellectual establishment. It's funding high-quality social sciences and humanities research that is simply not being taken up by the existing power structures in American and Western academia.
Infinity Foundation is the intellectual mothership of Sanatan Hindu Dharma. Whatever work, at least I am doing today, is because I was coached and my Shatru Bodh was awakened after reading Breaking India by Sri Ravi Shankar ji.
Rajiv is one of his kind, and I wish there were more. Rajiv's fearless arguments against those who run it down, who are always running things down, and it's like that. And he is saying, thumbing the nose, yellow, yellow, yellow. So his books, big, thick books, he is cutting arguments also of the so-called scholars and what's her name, Doniger and Philip and Susan and whoever. I think nobody has given them back like Rajiv has.
I think Rajiv Ji's great contribution to all of this has been his clarity and his fearlessness is presenting his views. This is a new Kurukshetra that we are in the middle of, and I think that's where Rajiv Ji's contribution has been so fundamental.
And people must read his books, his work, to understand what Sanatan is. Very often gold has to go through fire so that the dross falls off and gold comes shining. That's how I see Rajiv's work. Like, Shankaracharya did in his own time. Vivekananda to some extent.
And my guru, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, was also very fond of Rajiv. He is one of the greatest scholars of traditional knowledge in India, and he really loved Rajiv a lot.
I'm a neuroscientist who really loves to think deeply about these issues. In meeting someone like Rajiv, I met somebody who'd been doing this for years, before I was born.
I discovered Rajiv Ji about 8 years ago approximately, where he did that viral clip at Columbia University, where he really put that professor in his place. And I think Rajiv Ji gained a lot of followers and fans after that clip, and I was one of them. I have very fond memories with Rajiv Ji, and you can imagine dinner conversations. We didn't let the man have peace. He's such a privilege and honor to be sat next to him. He's a revolutionary in his thought process. I use some of the lexicon that he conjured up, Breaking India being the predominant one. He's the one that came with that phrase. So he's affected me, my peers, my circle in a lot of ways without even second guessing.
You are in many ways my intellectual hero, because I think a lot of my own thoughts got clarified by reading your books.
And one thing that I really admire about Rajiv Ji is that he will call people out. There's none of this political correctness. He names and shames, he will back up what he says.
And genuinely, we've been in the presence of a modern day rishi. He saw deeper than any of us had seen.
We want to confer a title of Gnana Yodha. He's a warrior for knowledge, not a simple intellectual Shakti or a scholarship. He's a Gnana Yodha.
Wish him a very, very healthy, happy life. And I hope that he continues the same work which he's doing and inspired thousands and millions of students all over the world.
He really sacrificed considerably, spoke truth in the face of power, was honest about the nature of the problem in a sincere, open, and even kind way. And that's truly unheard of. I just cannot emphasize enough how important the work is doing to preserve the best parts of the civilization and stop the madness from overtaking it.
He's been able to raise a generation of leaders that have come under his umbrella, and has within his perception the kernel of a vision for the future of Hindu life that is more active, that is more action oriented, and that seats Hindus and the rest of the world with the responsibility to be hands-on about the problems they have to solve.
The meaning of Rajiv is lotus, L-O-T-U-S, and lotus grows out of mud. So from all the muddy waters of anti-Sanatan, anti-Hindu, blah, 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 he has come up like a lotus. And I'm sure that lotus will have the sun of Gyan shining on him for a long, long time.